my goal with this video was to challenge your perspective on quite a few different things, of course, pertaining to Jerry Jones, training camp, and all the things that were mentioned in yesterday's press conference. Okay. And I also hope that you stick around to the end to hear what my biggest concern is for this season. And you may be surprised to hear that, in conjunction with what I said at the beginning of this clip here, is that it's not related to Jerry Jones whatsoever. All right, let me know if you agree on that front, and I hope that you enjoy this video. How sweet it is, man, to officially say that the dead period of the NFL calendar is dead. All right, first things first, I'm Lando from The Lando Show.
All right.
This is Sports Below the Surface.
I am inevitable.
And I can't wait to get to Oxnard here in just a few days. I'll be on site for the first time ever and taking you guys behind the scenes as much as I possibly can with me. So I feel really blessed to be in this position and for you guys to be on board. We're making the push. I think we're just a few away now from 5,000 subscribers, which is a milestone for me that we tried to hit prior to training camp. Training camp is officially here, and we're just about there. So that's a win. Now, today my goal is to challenge your perspective just a little bit, as usual, right? Sports below the surface. That's what we do. And then, of course, just get you to think outside the box. And then also, so it's really two things: challenge your perspective, but then get us as a fan base, as Cowboys media, as just the Cowboys world in general, stop putting so much stock into what Jerry Jones says. And I'm going to explain more of that, more as to why that is here in just a second. And hopefully it's going to all make sense to you. The first question that I want to ask in terms of challenging your perspective, okay, why do you ask yourself, why do you think it is that Jerry Jones has a gold jacket in the first place? Is it because he's a Hall of Fame caliber player? No. Is it because he's a Hall of Fame caliber coach? No. Is it because he's a Hall of Fame caliber general manager? No. Jimmy was at the forefront of the dynasty back in the 90s, assembling the roster, if you will. Okay, Jerry doesn't even have a ton of responsibility as far as the salary cap is concerned, right? That's Adam Pacifica's job and Steven's job. Steven is much more so the general manager than Jerry ever really has been. Okay. Jerry has a gold jacket because he is one of the smartest and best businessmen that has ever lived, especially in the world of sports. Right? When Jerry does things like he did yesterday at the podium to suggest that, or just to throwing shade, accusatory comments towards not just Micah Parsons, but Dak Prescott, and then maybe unnecessarily so throwing shade, throwing digs at Trevon Diggs and Terence Steele and company. Are those meaningless and unnecessary, senseless even? In the eyes of the fan? Absolutely. But not really any reason or anything to gain from suggesting that, just because you have Micah Parsons under contract, and we'll get some of these audio cuts here, you guys will understand what I'm saying. Just because we got Micah under contract doesn't mean we're going to have him. That's what Jerry said. That may seem meaningless to you, and it probably should. Right? But even when there's no reason to say anything that Jerry says, in the eyes of Jerry, the businessman with the Hall of Fame jacket, there are always right, at least right now, right, there are 10.1 billion reasons why he says everything he says. Because it gets you and me talking about it. There's no reason to worry whatsoever about Micah Parsons' contract. It's going to get done. There's no reason to worry whatsoever really about anybody's contract or even the salary cap in general. That's another thing I'm going to challenge your perspective on today. But all this people up in arms with the timing, and understandably so, right? I get it. The Cowboys kind of wait. They have a history of waiting on some of these contracts, but who? I guess I'm just gonna spill the beans, and I was trying to save this for a little bit later. I've got it kind of organized over here, but if y'all know where I'm at, if I stand on the pillar that suggests that the salary cap today doesn't exist, it only exists tomorrow. It's much more of an accounting principle, right? I've said it once. I've said it 12,000 times on here. Then I can't also, in the same breath, get frustrated with Jerry for not getting Micah's contract done 2 months ago. Whenever Micah blatantly suggested and almost called out the Joneses on saying, hey, no more behind my agent's back stuff. Call David Mulligetta and let's get this thing going. Or even last year when he was extension eligible for I guess technically it's been over a year now, right? After year 3, he's in year 5. They picked up his option. So Micah Parsons is under contract as of today. And that's what Jerry Jones keeps reiterating. Like, media is asking questions. Well, Micah Parsons showed up. He plans to be here in attendance, not necessarily participating, but he showed up despite not having his contract done. Well, Jerry's quick to note and to make sure that everybody understands everybody here is under contract today. All right. Turn to the page. The next thing that I want to just a word of caution, I guess, for the fan base. All right. And it's things like this. I've already made a real just sort of cautioning the fans against this, but just we're going to watch this together real quick. It's about 15 seconds. Something that ESPN aired this morning. And it just, without saying too much or over dwelling on it, I'm not going to waste a ton of energy. It is what it is. We all should understand that by now. But just in case you don't, when I say things like fake take sports media, 4-letter networks, all this stuff, like I'm pretty outspoken on a lot of the things that the narratives that get pushed on their behalf, just as a result of, or it's with a means of simply polarizing the fan and not necessarily having the fan or even integrity at the forefront of their thought process. It's just about polarization, getting clicks and views, and that's about it. Okay, classic example right here. Watch this.
Guys, they did make some moves this offseason, though, and one of them was wide receiver George Pickens via trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So during the team's first play of training camp, we saw Dak Prescott able to find Pickens for a massive touchdown. Obviously, a great way to start the day. Dak said this regarding the playoffs. Nobody's more upset. Nobody's more pissed. Nobody's more disappointed. All right, guys, they did.
That was on First Take this morning, guys, where show host and whoever else is there in attendance, I'm not sure the rest of it looks like maybe Shefty on the back left there. I can't tell. There's a panel of people on ESPN, and one of their introductory stories, the top of the hour, hey, let's show this Cowboys clip. And there's other people doing this on Twitter too, posting fight videos of the Cowboys. Not, somebody said 2 hours in, Cowboys are already fighting, full pads, right? And you're seeing like players and coaches who are no longer even on the roster very clearly in frame. Right? It's just crazy to me. Those people are just auto muted or auto blocked from this point on. Like for those of us, like I mentioned, who do the best that we can to operate with integrity and objectivity, keeping the fan's best interest, the truth for the true fan, at the forefront of what we do. It's incredibly disingenuous. It's distasteful. But luckily, people like me, people like Vach, people like Sky, people like What's the King? People like you name it. Make sure my audio is clear here. Yeah, we should be all good. We are inevitable.
I am inevitable.
And Vach has already made his breakthrough. He's in with .com now, and Crown Global Media incoming. All right, so we're doing the best that we can to sort of combat all this stuff that's just nonsense. All right, but ESPN First Take, they mention Dak Prescott first play of practice completes a long ball to George Pickens. And there's three things wrong with that. Number one, that's not even George Pickens. That was Brandon Cooks. Cooks is no longer on the roster, as you well know. Number two, they're not in full pads. Okay, first day of full padded practice is not until July 27th. And I'll be there on site when that happens. Okay, and number three, this wasn't even a clip from this year. This was 2024. These so-called experts, these billion-dollar industries that are responsible for creating the narrative, whether right or wrong, whether in good faith or not, they didn't even do an ounce of research or critical thinking to just think about this. There's so much that is wrong with this clip here, and we are spinning it as if it's right now. This is elementary. I mean, this is pre-elementary. This is pre-kindergarten stuff here. This is toddler levels of. I mean, there's not enough words or adjectives that I can say. It's just bad, and it's sad. All right, that's all I said on Twitter was that it's sad. Okay, so just be careful. There's clearly lots to talk about, right? But there's equally as much to pay attention to as far as who we are getting our information from, who and where. All right, now let's talk about some of the fun things here that were mentioned yesterday. We're gonna get to cut number one. I've got a few timestamps here that are just kind of important thought or think pieces that are worth noting. 7:40. This is Stephen Jones talking about taking two to tango, but also a good time to get things done with a lot of players beyond just Micah Parsons. Let's take a listen.
It makes for a good environment to get some things done before the season starts. At the end of the day, I think, Clarence, you said it best. It does take two. And a lot of times you might be surprised where we might be and where they might have been, where they were wanting to hold. And obviously, I think most players do understand if you're.
Okay, so first thing I want to mention is Clarence said it takes two to tango. Stephen acknowledged and agreed to that, but it really takes three, as we're finding out right now, and as we've discussed many times here. This Micah Parsons contract situation or the extension. It's the agent that's involved here that's equally as much of the holdup as often as it is the Joneses or the player. Okay, it's not just two. This is a triple-edged negotiation sword. These big time contracts for the big time players. All right, so. But what's important here is that Stephen Jones is saying they are actually looking to get out in front of, right? I know a lot of you guys are frustrated about the timing and them waiting too long. And I'm going to explain to you why you shouldn't do that. If you subscribe to what we do here, then I hope that you will see it from my perspective and understand it's just wasted energy, wasted time and effort spent on, they should have done it long ago. They would have saved so much money. Not necessarily. Okay, hold that thought. Stephen's saying or suggesting we're going to use this time to get not just Micah done, but there's a bunch of other players who have tags, options, extensions coming, like Tyler Smith, Deron Bland, you other guys, Brandon Aubrey, right? That we're going to try to get things done with. So that was cool to hear Stephen Jones talk about that. So keep a lookout for those discussions, reports, or even negotiations or extensions getting done or happening here in the coming weeks. Training camp is a great time to get a lot of things done because there's a lot of people that are just on site right there. Boom, you can have conversations. The next thing I want to do is sort of parlaying that thought, that note there from Stephen Jones. Is okay. So Jerry, how do I want to? Let me think about how do I want to take this angle here. With the agents taking 3 to tango, okay, and Stephen being adamant in response to Jane Slater, I think I actually have this timestamp here too. $13.18. Let's go right back to where we just came from, and let me share this screen yet again because I think it's notable. This is Stephen reiterating that Jerry doesn't talk to the agents. Remember, he said, I go straight to the principal. He's meaning straight to the horse's mouth, which in this case, the horse is the athlete, the player. Okay. Jerry doesn't deal with the agents very often, if at all. That's Stephen's job. I'm going to explain why that's significant because I'm just going to explain why that's significant. And I'm going to give you guys a little bit of, hopefully a little bit of context from another respected member, or at least from my point of view, a guy that I respect in this industry in Cowboys media. He had a great point, and I want to make sure that it's highlighted. But listen to Stephen first.
And Jerry, as he said, doesn't speak to many agents. I do.
So what is your relationship with Mugoleta been so far?
We've always had a good relationship with Mulligetta.
What would you say?
And specifically, Adam speaks to the agents as well.
Adam, he's talking about Adam Pacifica, who is the director of basically of cap management. He's overseeing the salary cap and is in charge of the financial, a lot of the financials alongside Stephen. Okay, they kind of work together on that. But why, to me, that's significant. Stephen Jones doubling down on what Jerry said. He's like, you know what? Look, I'm dealing with the principal. I'm not talking to the agents very much, which may, in fairness to something that I said on a few shows back when this first went wild, was that Jerry Jones pretending not to know David Mulligetta's name. I think there's a much better chance that actually is the case. Maybe he really did forget because he really doesn't deal with these guys very often, and especially not Mulligetta, right? He's saying Stephen Jones dealt with Todd France and David Mulligetta, who are both agent representatives of Athletes First. It's those two men right there are, and Athletes First in general, one of the most reputable and respected agencies in the entire National Football League. Some of the largest contracts, I think actually 3 of the largest now, all have that representation. Derek Stingley Jr. is one of them. Deshaun Watson was one of them. Micah Parsons obviously is one of them. Dak Prescott was one of them. There's George Pickens is also represented by Athletes First. So, and David Mulligetta specifically. So that's all important. But so now, why I think that's significant? Why does Jerry Jones not deal with the agent? Great question. Challenge your perspective. Let's think outside the box here for a second. Jesse Holley did a great job of doing just that. Okay, caught a little bit of their segment. I need to probably go finish it because he was kind of rapping there. But I heard him say, Jesse Holley of DLLS Sports, DLLS Cowboys, by the way. He mentioned astutely that in his mind, it makes sense for Jerry Jones not to want to speak directly to the agent and only deal with the players because Jerry is the master businessman, the master salesman, the master almost manipulator as far as understanding people and knowing how to deal with their emotions. he can say things that can directly affect the way that the player feels or views his money, his contractual situation. If he is one-on-one with them without the agent's influence, helping them think about all the different ways that not just he, but just the Dallas Cowboys brand, the star in general, can help catapult them and sort of more than make up for whatever differences that the two sides, 3 parties in total, like I said, but 2 sides may be as far as their contract is or their dispute, their holdout is happening, right? So Jerry's always trying to kind of bridge the gap by, hey, Micah, I know you want to be the highest paid non-quarterback ever. I know the price keeps going up a little bit, but hey, what if we just did it this way a little bit, and the endorsement deals, just me having your back, all the other things that we can do to sort of help make sure that this isn't much of a net loss. Regardless, it just makes things a little bit easier for us on the salary cap, the manipulation, the accounting gymnastics, right? Changing their perspective a little bit, handling and dealing with them emotionally, manipulating their feelings, because they are directly tied to the organization. The agent is not. The agent is only concerned with his client and himself, right? His reputation to be able to handle more contracts, the highest paid and the most highly touted players in the league, prospects. He's got to keep getting maximum money so that he can keep catching the eye of the maximal talents. Right? If David's just taking all these discounts, or if Todd's taking all these discounts, then they're less attractive to the next incoming superstar. Right? So they have an obligation. That's why I say things like, people were asking Dak Prescott before the start of last season to take a team-friendly deal. Well, it's not on Dak. It's not on Micah. It won't be on Tyler Smith. It's not on George Pickens. They have a little bit of say, but they're one of the 3 parties. And the party responsible for the continuous elevation of the market, what the market says that your value is worth, is the agent, because the agent holds an obligation to the NFLPA just like the player does. The Players Association is in a constant tug of war with revenue sharing from the National Football League. If they take a discount, they do a disservice to the future of the face of the league and of their franchise. They can't take discounts. It's really difficult to do that nowadays, especially with agencies like Athletes First. Which ties me directly into what I was trying to hold off on saying earlier, but this is really important, okay? The next cut, 1540, Jerry discussing the obligation to do things before the end of the contract. I've kind of already said it, but I'm going to continue to elaborate, all right? Right here.
Obligation to do something before the contract is over. Okay? In other words, not have the benefit of the contract.
This goes in depth on where fans are frustrated about why the Joneses are still waiting. Why hasn't Micah's contract already been signed? A history of waiting the last minute to get things done. Well, Jerry's kind of explaining why, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with him or siding with him. I'm just saying, from my perspective, my logic, the way that I think about the salary cap in general and team building, if I operate under the assumption and the factual assumption, right, that as the Eagles have clearly illustrated to us, the salary cap can always be manipulated. right? It's simple accounting. It's a credit card. It's real tomorrow, not necessarily real today. Then I can't be upset if they want to wait until the entire term, the full term of the contract gets expended. Right. So for instance, not extending Micah after year 3, but instead waiting until right before year 5 because of the unknowns. Right. But also because the difference between when they would have extended Micah in year 3, because the agent and the player aren't negotiating based on where the market currently is. This is what's really important. And Jerry alluded to this. The media, the fans, everybody in the general public thinks that all these deals could or should get done earlier based on where the market is currently at. So it's like right now, the highest paid corners in the NFL are going for $30 million. That's what Derek Stingley Jr. got. So people might say, well, you better pay DeRon Bland now $30 million before the next guy gets paid 33 APY. Well, what Jerry's saying is that no, that doesn't matter. Like, we're not getting DeRon Bland at 30 now because the agents are already operating under the assumption that the market is going to continue to balloon, right? It's all based on projections. Okay, so they're not negotiating at 30. They're negotiating at projections based on what's going to happen next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. It's kind of a guessing game, right? So DeRon Bland, his money doesn't start at really 30. It's about, first of all, the APY is meaningless. That's what people fall in love with, that specific number. Like Dak makes $60 million a year. No, he doesn't. That's what the APY says. But if you go and look, the void years, deferred payments, basically, okay, kicking the can a little bit, you're able to spread that stuff out. So the APY is just a simple calculation to understand the total maximal value of the contract, but it's not a good estimation of the actual money. The real money that matters is the total guarantees. And that's what's the holdup. Jane Slater asked Jerry, he's like, what is maybe it was Steven that she directed the question to. What is the biggest holdup, right? Is it APY or is it injury injury guarantees and all that stuff? It's the guaranteed money. Injuries play a part in that, yes, but it's all about you got to watch your back because of the nature of the sport, right? Injuries occur. And it's much more deflating. It's much more difficult to deal with if injuries happen to the top talent, the highest paid players on your roster. Because you're setting your books for that calendar year under the assumption that they're going to be around and be available. So that's just the way that Jerry thinks. He's like, okay, I'm best served to wait because I can't predict when injuries are going to occur. And the difference between waiting or getting the deal done last year and this year, APY, maybe it's a couple million, but with regards to a 4 to 5 year contract extension with 2 to 3 extra void years tacked on the end of it to help us manipulate the money, it's a pointless argument. Right? It's wasted breath and energy. He's like, let me make sure that this guy's good. Let me make sure that he's willing to continue to put the work in, right? Because he's been burned before. And he mentioned it. Trevon Diggs. They fined him $500,000 to make an example out of him. They're frustrated with Diggs because he's one of the higher paid men on the roster. They got his deal done early. But ever since then, I think it's been about three years ago now, since that extension. Since then, it hasn't gone well. Right? So Jerry's saying, look, Us waiting isn't hurting our books as much as the media makes it out to be. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They have almost twice the amount of money into void years as the next highest roster. Go and look at the amount of contracts that the Philadelphia Eagles have that have those little orange boxes. I'll show you what I mean. I've done this before, but I like to continue to remind people. Botrack.com. Let me just pull up Dak Prescott for the sake of this audience. Okay. Here's what I mean. See the orange boxes there at the bottom? There's technically 4 of them. All right. That's usually reserved for quarterbacks. Or in other words, usually the highest paid player on any team's roster. Okay. Those little orange boxes right there. The Eagles, you go and look at the Cowboys maybe have 3 or 4 of those where they really have money deferred well into the future. CeeDee Lamb's contract now has that. Micah Parsons will have that. Maybe there's a couple more examples that are actually slipping my mind right now. But if you go look at what the Eagles have, they have like 12 guys that they're just perpetually kicking the can down the road for, financially speaking. They're putting money, that's what people don't understand, I don't think, is that money is going directly into the player's pocket. Okay, but it's not being reflected onto their books until years in the future. Okay, so Saquon gets a $14 million bonus, boom. But the Eagles don't necessarily pay for it as far as their cap goes until 1, 2, 3 years down the road even. Okay, they're doing this with all of their top paid. They have like 12 guys that have void years tacked on. But so the beautiful thing about all of this is, and once again, this is hopefully the punchline to my point. Okay, not just stop paying so much attention to what Jerry Jones says, but stop worrying about the timing of these contracts because of void years, guys. Okay, what the Eagles have already gone all in on that most people haven't even thought about yet is that about around 2029, when most people suggest you look at the Eagles' financial situation, all the money that they have, all the dead money, the money that's deferred into void years where they can sort of spread out and have all these hits, all this dead money for players that may not even be around anymore, may or may not even be in the league anymore. Right? 2029, when that new TV deal expires and they're beginning the negotiations for 2030 and beyond, right now, there are websites, there are services where you can go and you can see that there is a projected 30+% increase. 30 to 40, actually, I think is what they're projecting. Between 30 and 40% increase come 2030 in the salary cap. So remember when I've said this, I wrote about it at cowboyscountry.com all offseason and I talked about it all on the Lando Show, the YouTube channel, this very channel right here, this year, last year, and the year before, the ever-ballooning salary cap, more than making up for whatever it is that you defer into the dead cap, the void years later on down the road. The average increase annually of the salary cap, this is where it's really important, all right? And I'm going to stop sharing this right here so that you guys can see me. 30 to 40% increase in salary cap as a result of the new TV deal, the numbers, the eyeballs, the ratings, because that's what this is all about at the end of the day. It's a product. It's an entertainment business. It's all about money. The average increase year over year right now is roughly a fourth of that, of what that projection is supposed to be. So whatever, point being, okay, think about it this way. Howie Roseman and company, Jeffrey Lurie, the Eagles, right? By the way, Jeffrey Lurie liquidated, 8% of the Eagles' ownership so that he could have the actual financial assets to hand all these players, put money directly into their pockets, directly into their bank account. Okay? He sold 8% of his business, of his team. But the thing is the 92% that he has now is worth more today than the 100% that he owned before selling the 8%. They won the Super Bowl. Okay? He needed liquidated assets to put money directly into the pockets of all these top players. 400 plus million in void years. Nobody else has more than 270, I think. Okay? But guess what? All that money that he liquidated, put into the pockets of these players and deferred into the void years, it doesn't get reflected on the salary cap situation until years down the line and into those void years. Okay? But the beautiful thing about it all is that Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, they know they're operating under the assumption of, and they are betting and counting on, that 30 to 40% balloon just in one off season of the NFL salary cap when they need it most, that lifeline. It's going to come. And all of their credit card expenses that they'll be due all around the same time, when all these players are just all of a sudden on expiring contracts at the same exact time. All these players are getting old. They're past their prime. They're out of the league, and they still have money that was bonused into their pockets years past when they won the Super Bowl, and then this year and next year, right? But 28, 29, 30, when all these void years are coming into play, right? They're fizzling out. All those deals. Eagles got to pay for it, boy. They ain't gonna have no money once all this hit. That's gonna get hit like a freight train. 2029, 2030 gets here, they're in trouble, boy. They're gonna have nothing left. They're gonna have they ain't gonna have hardly even so much of a roster to field. Put a competitive team out there. They're gonna lose almost every game. It's gonna be absolute treachery, devastation. Howie Roseman's getting fired. Jerry Lurie is losing ownership. Jeffrey Lurie is going to lose his ownership, right? Sell the team because they're going to the city of Philadelphia is going to crumble come 2029. Not so fast. Not so fast, my friends. Because that new CBA or that new TV deal is going to have their back. So, Jerry Jones, how much do you really love winning? How much of you, or I guess let's just say of that 1990s version of you still exists? Are you truly all about winning? Because if you are, under this Eagles model, the timing of these contracts, all the energy that the fans waste over, public pandering over the energy wasted over, should have got Micah done 2 years ago. He would have been 35 APY, much cheaper, much better on the salary cap. All that is nonsense. Most of it. Everybody loves a good bargain deal. A Tyron Smith, a Patrick Mahomes, even a Terence Steele or a Trevon Diggs, right? It didn't work out, but those were bargain deals at the time, so they thought. Terence Steele going to be fine this year, by the way. Don't worry about that. And I can't wait to talk about football. I feel like we still, the dead period's over, but we're still not talking about football. So that's how come. Needless to say, don't be mad at Jerry for waiting. Don't be mad at Jerry for saying what he said, because he's the businessman. There are 10.1 billion reasons why for saying what he said, even if it doesn't directly benefit anyone. To suggest Micah Parsons is still going to miss time because of injury, or because he missed last year, he's going to miss time this year, right? It's all pointless, guys, in terms of what's inevitably going to get done. They try to play this tough guy energy, this standoffish, let's gain some leverage, some negotiation leverage. Let's use the media to get a discount, right? It doesn't achieve that. We've already proven that. There is tangible evidence that tells us that it doesn't work. And Jerry knows it doesn't work in that regard. But what it does work for, what it does do, it stirs the fan base and it stirs the media. It gets us talking, right? And that's what this is all about at the end of the day, okay? So if you want to do your part, right? And there's only 5,000 some odd of you here. But if you really want to try to make a difference, then stop putting so much energy into everything that Jerry Jones says. Understand what he's really doing and understand how the salary cap truly works. And then it's all fine. Let's slow that capital, that year over year Dallas Cowboys net worth growth by just only talking about football. That would be great, wouldn't it? And then maybe, just maybe, he'd put a little bit more time, energy, and effort into swiping that credit card, deferring top player salary into the future, void years, much like the Eagles do. Like more teams are going to start doing, teams that are actually desperate to win. Jerry's got a chance to prove all that. All right, the last thing that I want to mention, we're going to end on a high note here. Brian Schottenheimer, the one quote that I want to make sure that we hear, the first word out of Schotty's mouth, let's get back to this clip here, okay? 10:50. You guys could probably, if you've been paying attention, you can probably guess what he said. The very first word, pretty much, the first meaningful word. This right here.
Bulls 90% of the time.
For Brian, when you're getting ready to come out here, your first training camp as head coach, what's like at the top of your list of what you want to get accomplished over the next 3.5 weeks?
I'm John Machota of The Athletic. Brian Schottenheimer, what's at the top of your list that you want to accomplish during this camp?
We were talking about that last night with the staff a little bit. Just, we want to have a very physical training camp.
Boom.
There's limitations to what.
Boom. We want to have a very physical training camp. And yes, there are limitations. But that's been the message of the entire offseason, spoken once again with conviction, without hesitation, and with an eagle eye. This guy has a plan. The staff that he's assembled, by the way, not his friends that he hired. He didn't go out and hire his buddies, guys that he was comfortable around, complacent with. Nah. He went out, sought, and got who he thought in his mind were the best, the most qualified individuals, guys that he had been studying from afar in the event that he got this opportunity, which he did. Clayton Adams, Connor Riley, Matt Eberflus, and company. The most qualified individuals, not his most qualified best friends. Physicality. The Buffalo blueprint that we've discussed so often, so frequently. The Cowboys doing everything that they can, not just with their words, with their actions. All the offensive linemen that they brought in, Tyler Booker included. 6'5", 335. No more of these, and God bless him. I'm thankful for him. Glad to have him still as a rotational piece. But the Brock Hoffmans of the world, the centers who turn guard, who are undersized, to put it lightly. The 300-pound men who are more suited for outside zone, movers as opposed to people movers, forklifters, like the three that are on the interior of the Cowboys offensive line this year, the tone setters, the 6'5", 335s of the world, Tyler Smith, Cooper Beebe, and Tyler Booker. Physicality. It's a mindset, right? The last thing I want to leave you with is this. My number one concern right now. It's not with Jerry Jones. It's not with the cornerback situation, which is still an issue that we have to figure out. How healthy is Trevon Diggs? Is he going to play this year? What's Savone Revel Jr.'s timeline look like? Deron Bland, is he going to kick inside? Is he going to have to? Okay, Kaiir Elam, is their investment on the former first round talent with a lot of trending upward signs right now? How is he going to come along and come of age? Kalen Carson, the guy who many thought was one of the steals of the draft last year, can he have a much better sophomore campaign than his freshman rookie season? Those are questions to answer. The running back room, most people think that that's the biggest hole in this Cowboys roster. I disagree, because the running back position, much more, it's a dependent variable based on what type of box that your quarterback and your weaponry can dictate. Okay, if George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are on the field at the same time, you can bet they're going to have two safeties over the top. They may disguise it. They may roll that coverage. They may try to, post-snap confuse a little bit. You may not see it pre-snap. But Dak knows. They're going to sag off a little bit. All right. And then on top of that, so what can your quarterback and your skill position players dictate as far as coverage goes? But how well can your offensive line move people, but also work in tandem with one another? If those two things are going, then the who at the running back position, in this case, Williams, Sanders, Blue, Vaughn, Lipke, Maffa, those guys, those last names matter much less than they otherwise would have if everything else wasn't okay. It's much more about the how than the who. How you run the football. And guess what? The most qualified individuals that Brian Schottenheimer brought in to help rectify that situation: Connor Riley, Clayton Adams, know a thing or three about the how. What concerns me the most is the defensive tackle position. Mazi Smith, Jay Toia, and company, right? The interior defensive line position, that whole room, being able to be strong enough to not get pushed off the ball and to hold up when teams inevitably decide to see if the Cowboys have made that adjustment, the one that they couldn't make in the postseason years ago, or within really the last 3 years. The downfall of all of their successful seasons before last year's, just complete rash of injuries. It's the unknown of that particular position, betting on guys who haven't shown that they can do it yet, right? But also the philosophy of the Cowboys' new defensive line coach, and they're really also, parlaying with how Matt Eberflus kind of wants to do things, but going back to more of a penetrating and attacking front. The philosophy of the defensive lineman getting upfield as opposed to just being strong and not moving. I'm not saying that it's not going to work. I'm not saying that Mazi Smith's not going to make that jump. But that's not what he did whenever he was good enough to be drafted in round 1. On Bruce Feldman's, number 1 on Bruce Feldman's college football freaks list 3 years ago. He was a two-gapper under Wink Martindale. He was I'm stronger than you. I'm not trying to get up the field and pressure the quarterback. I'm just trying to not move. I'm trying to anchor so that everybody else can flow around me. If it's not, or if it's back to what Dan Quinn wanted to do a couple years ago, Mozzie's rookie season, when things just went off the rails as far as him being a contributing factor. Asked to be more of a pass rusher, lose 30 pounds on top of doing your full-time. That's 2 full-time jobs for a rookie who's trying to make the transition. Impossible. That's my biggest fear. It's not just the development or the unknowns of the two particular players that haven't proven that they can do it yet at this level. Reason to believe that, there's optimism for both Toya and Mazi and beyond, a couple guys behind them. But it's the philosophy of the coaching staff now wanting to be more of a penetrating and attacking style. That's what worries me the most, and that's what I can't wait to see. But physicality, that's the word of the day. Okay. And I hope that everything else makes sense too. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments. Make sure that you're helping us continue to grow here, continue to support this platform, going out of my way, out of my pocket to get to Oxnard, California, to do the best that I can to take you guys behind the scenes and deliver the objective sports below the surface truth to the true fan like yourself, right? I'm Lando from The Lando Show. This is Sports Below the Surface. And we're going to continue onwards, despite all the other things that we're having to contend with, right? With four-letter networks spinning last year's training camp highlights as this year's news and headlines. That's just the nature of the beast. But make sure you hit that like button for me, assuming you're subscribed already. Remember that prayer changes things and the war's already won. And I'll talk to you soon.
Say, subscribe to the channel, please. Say, hook 'em horns. Say, go Cowboys.
Go Cowboys!
Say, woohoo! Talk to you soon.